Hello, welcome to our Chapter 2, Section 2 notes for our government class. Chapter 2, Section 2 is about our first government in the United States. So, before we were our own country, at least the 13 colonies on the Atlantic coast that many people think of as the earliest United States, we were colonies of Great Britain. By 1775, many colonists didn't like being part of England or Great Britain anymore, and some of them got together and wrote the Declaration of Independence. And Thomas Jefferson was the main author of the Declaration of Independence, and he wrote that, and then it was approved by what is called the Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776, which is why July 4th is known as Independence Day in the United States, still to this day. Why is the Declaration of Independence important? It lists and lays out the reasons the colonies decided to separate from Great Britain and to form an independent country. But it is much more than just that. It is a document stating American ideals. In many ways, many people would argue it lays out a case for human rights within a country, that all governments should protect certain human rights for all people. The most famous part of the Declaration clearly states, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these, and then this is the most important part, among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This passage is one of the most famous in American writing, according to our text. Now, the American story, and for the last 250 years, many other countries' story in the world, is one of trying to expand those rights. So, of course, it said all men are created equal. Even when they wrote this, all men were not treated equally in the United States. There was slavery, for example, but also women were left out in many ways, and all men are created equal leaves out half of the population. And so there has been a long struggle that continues to expand those rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to all peoples. And that story continues. So the textbook talks about the Declaration of Independence, lays out American ideals for a government, but it takes a war against Great Britain to actually guarantee we have our own government. What is now the United States wins that war and does get to create its own government. But we do not create, at first, the government we have today under the Constitution. The first government we create is called the Articles of Confederation. So after the American Revolution, when we are first a new country, we organize the 13 colonies, now states, come together and organize a government under a document called the Articles of Confederation. These are the 13 states from Maine in the north to Georgia in the south that create the United States under the first government, the Articles of Confederation. Many people thought that the Articles were too weak. And as the first 3 or 4 years after the Revolution unfold, there is a recognition that the Articles of Confederation need to change. Weaknesses of the Articles included lack of a president or an executive branch, or at least a strong president. There were no national courts, and there was really almost no power of taxation. And so the central government, the federal government over all 13 states, was very weak and had very little power. And the 13 individual states were very powerful themselves. But because each state had its own interests, there was almost no such thing as a United States. So after just several years, many of the founding fathers, many people who had led the revolution and served in the government during the revolution, and afterwards, under the Articles of Confederation, thought, boy, we need a stronger central government. And they started to meet to draft a new government. But the very first government we served under in this country was, in fact, the Articles of Confederation. And that is what Chapter 2, Section 2 notes are about. And we will stop there and move on to Chapter 2, Section 3 next time.